Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to a special housing report brought to you in association with the Bank of New Zealand. Today we look at figures from Barfoot and Thompson on house sales nationally and also mortgage approvals figures from the Reserve Bank. But firstly, Barfoot and Thompson. Now, why should we look at some numbers from one chain of real estate agents? Well, they are the first to come out with numbers for October and they are the biggest in Auckland, which is the biggest market in the country. Barfoot and Thompson has about 40% of the market share in Auckland and about 16% of the sales nationally, at least those reported through the Real Estate Institute. And the numbers for October were very weak. Just 561 properties sold in October. That's actually down 18.6% from September. A real surprise, because as we go through September, October into November, we should be having the spring flush of sales in the housing market as people put their houses on the market when the sun comes out, the open homes get opened up and people start buying houses. That's the theory, at least. However, sales in October were actually lower than in January of earlier this year. Even Barfoot and Thompson said it had been a very slow start to the spring. And when you look at October this year from a year ago, it's down 36%. However, even though volumes are down, the average prices are not. There seems to be a bit of a Mexican standoff happening in the market, as lots of new properties go onto the market and there's some buyers around, but they're waiting for prices to drop. And of course, the sellers aren't keen to drop their prices. So what's going to happen next? Well, let's have a look at listings for Barfoot and Thompson. They say their new listings rose 16% in October to 1,296 new properties put onto their books. Now that works out at 3 times sales in October. Total listings were up 5.2%. Obviously a lot of people have been on the market for a long time now. There are actually 5,861 properties on Barfoot and Thompson's books nationally. That's 10 times the number of properties they sold in October. There's an awful lot of property that's stuck on that market and just not selling. And you can see here from this chart that through 2004, 5, 6, property was up quite high, and you see those little peaks, particularly before and after Christmas as people do their selling and buying. And then you went through that dip through 2008 when the property market went into a recession. A rebound in early 2009 as we saw people return to the market when interest rates were slashed and people thought, phew, we've gotten away with it. And then it started to fall off again. And certainly we're heading back down towards those mid-2008 recession levels. So that's actually sales in the market. What's happening with mortgage approvals? Well, the Reserve Bank every week comes out with numbers on mortgage approvals. Not just the numbers that are approved, but the value of those approvals. And the numbers have been very weak in recent weeks. When you look at what's happening with those numbers, in the week to October 30, which was the week that included the Monday of the long weekend, the Labour weekend, it was the lowest on record. That's outside of the Christmas period when obviously a lot of people don't do mortgage approvals, they're on holiday. But that's the lowest mortgage approvals outside the Christmas week on record. And the Reserve Bank started taking those numbers in 2003. And you can see here from this chart, obviously there are big spikes down, and that's the Christmas week going back to 2005, 2006. We saw it rise through 2005-06, then come off through 2007 as people started to get maxed out on their debt, and then we saw a real fall off through 2008. Bit of a rebound early 2009, again matching closely what's happening with sales and prices, and then it's been falling ever since. So that suggests as a leading indicator that the housing market is in for some tough times ahead. Essentially, New Zealanders are reluctant to take on extra debt. They're already right up to their noses in debt. When you look at household debt to disposable income in New Zealand, it's around about the 150, 160% mark. That's up from 100% or so about 5 or 6 years ago. We seem to have hit debt saturation point, and we don't want to get any more. And when you've got a housing market that's been boosted by increasing debt and people stop increasing debt, that's going to have an effect on prices and activity, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. I'm Bernard Hickey. That was a special housing report brought to you in association with Bank of New Zealand.